Warning, this episode contains graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, I'm Amanda.
I'm Milissa, and this is Dark and Twisties.
Dark and Twisties is a weekly crime and creepy podcast hosted by two best friends who uncover some of life's twisted moments.
Bringing you a dark dose of serotonin and self-care sprinkled with a little humor, we run you through the facts all while dropping our unprofessional opinion.
Follow us on Instagram at Dark and Twisties Podcast.
Find us by searching Dark and Twisties on Spotify and Google Podcasts.
And join us as we unravel our latest dark and twisty obsession.
The Macdonalds were your typical military family living on Fort Bragg base. United States Army Captain Jeffery, his pregnant wife Colette, and their young daughters Kimberly and Kristen turned in for the evening of February 16, 1970, unaware of hours later most of the family would be brutally murdered by 4 intruders. The surviving member of the family would eventually make it clear that their accounts of what happened that evening weren't what the evidence would prove. Welcome back to part 2 of the Macdonald case. Today we are going to talk about the trials and all that fun stuff. Well, I guess it's not really fun, but that's what we're talking about.
It's a little fun.
It's a little fun.
It's cheaper than therapy.
It is. It is. You don't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
I mean, some people have to pay for it, but we don't.
We don't.
An initial Army Article 32 hearing into Macdonald's possible guilt, overseen by Colonel Warren Rock, was convened on July 6, 1970. This hearing lasted until September, so that was a couple months. Macdonald's lawyer, Bernard Siegel, chose a pretty aggressive approach for his client. He stated Army CID was very clumsy and unprofessional and trampled all over the crime scene and obliterated any evidence the perpetrators may have left behind in the murders, and losing any vital evidence like the fiber found underneath Kimberly's nail and the 4 tips of surgical gloves found under the bed.
So they had it, and they had it bagged and everything, and then it just disappeared.
Yes, they had that fiber that they found under her nail and the tips of the surgical gloves were found under the bed. They lost that evidence.
How convenient. The only things we needed.
It's super convenient. The first person to testify in Macdonald's defense was responding officer Kenneth Micah, who testified that on his way to Macdonald's house on the night of the murders, he saw a blonde woman in a wide-brimmed hat sitting on the corner about half a mile from Macdonald's house. He stated that this sighting was unusual because of the weather and the time of night. If you remember back, it was pouring, I guess. And so Micah also testified that a paramedic placed that flower pot that was knocked over, he placed it upright when he walked in the house to take Macdonald out of the stretcher. So he was basically saying, they fucked with evidence. He was also testifying that he saw the woman that Macdonald described close to his house that night. I don't know if that's true. He could have. I mean, I think when I was watching the documentary on it, people were saying that Micah was just not a very good cop to begin with, so I don't think a lot of people believed him.
If he wasn't a great cop, something to get you on the board there, be like, yeah, I definitely saw that lady with a big old white hat. How could you miss her?
Big old white hat, blonde hair, and hippies on drugs, so I mean, you never know. So Colonel Rock also testified that he himself went to the crime scene and tipped the coffee table over, with it coming to rest on its side. Again, that makes it look even more like there wasn't a struggle if he's the one that knocked that table over and not Macdonald.
The only things that are in the living room that kind of show any happenings were actually happening from the cops.
So it didn't even actually happen in this struggle he claims happened.
They did a little dance around the coffee table during that struggle.
Nope, they didn't even knock it over. It was the cop that did it. So more and more, his account of things is making less sense. And I'm not even sure if these people were trying to make it seem like, oh, what Jeffrey's saying is true. Because if they were trying to say that, you're making it seem a lot less true.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, we totally believe him, but that coffee table, I actually knocked that over. The flower pot,
I actually did that.
That was the other guy over there. But no, we actually still believe that he did it, even though all of this stuff we did. We contributed to the crime scene.
He also stated that if no wet footprints were found at the crime scene from the perpetrators, that meant that the crime scene investigators also failed to find any evidence of the large number of MPs and civilians who walked around the house that night, which I think we talked about that in the first episode, how it didn't make sense that there was no footprints. So Colonel Rock also said that.
Especially if it's supposed to be pouring.
Obviously, you're not from North Carolina. I am. But we have that really ugly red clay down here. And when it like rains, that shit gets everywhere.
Well, see, the hippies with the clean feet were very careful.
They decided to wash their feet before they came in and murdered 3 people. We must wash our feet.
Why is everybody washing their body parts before they do murder, though? He claims he washes his hands.
They don't want to make the house dirty. So in August, Siegel was approached by a delivery man named William Posey, stating that the blonde woman that Macdonald claims killed his family could be 17-year-old drug addict and police informant Helena Stokely. According to Posey, Stokely had been in the company of 2 or 3 guys in a parked car outside of her apartment complex at 4 a.m. on the morning of the murders. Posey also claimed that Stokely stopped wearing her boots and floppy hat after the murders and was wearing black on the day of the funeral, and told him that she couldn't remember what she had done the night of the murders. Posey related this info at the trial, also adding that Stokely had told him her and her boyfriend couldn't get married till they went out and, quote, killed some people. Stokely was found and questioned and contradicted herself a lot. She stated she couldn't remember if she had anything to do with the murders, and also couldn't remember if she even left the house that night. So even though Posey was convinced Stokely had something to do with the murders, she was released and was not subpoenaed to testify at the trial.
It's really convenient how she doesn't remember what she did the night of the murder. Like, that's how they always are. Oh, I don't remember.
It's been said multiple times by multiple people that she actually confessed to them, saying that she knows that she did it. But then anytime she's interviewed by cops, she will not admit to it. It's kind of hard to make her a credible witness if she was constantly on drugs. I mean, you can't really say for sure that she's telling the truth.
I find it great that there was a stipulation to get married. You gotta kill some people.
We can't get married until we go kill people. I'm sorry. I love you,
awesome.
but murder before marriage.
Murder before marriage. The only stipulation I have is I don't care about debt. I don't care about children. We have got to kill somebody before.
Right. We have to murder people before we can get married. That's a weird stipulation, but you know.
When I get married, I'm going to tell Shane that. Murder before marriage.
Murder before marriage, my guy.
Yep, murder. The only way that we can get married is if we murder somebody. So
if you can't handle me as a murderer, you can't handle me as a wife. Jesus. Oh, God.
You can't handle me with a knife. You can't handle this life.
Oh my God.
That's the best.
Oh, that's the best thing ever. Oh, God.
Murder before marriage.
So during Macdonald's testimony, he recounted that he may have possibly moved Colette's body, stating she was kind of sitting up against the wall, and he laid her flat at one point. So I think he was trying to like make it seem like, oh, that's how a fiber of my pajamas got under her because I moved her. He also stated that he may have washed his hands in the sink before checking his own wounds. Remember, he didn't want an infection on top of the wound.
Yeah, you don't want an infection on top of the fact that, you know, you just lost 3 of your family members.
Right. Can't get an infection. That just makes it worse. So he was also questioned in regards to his infidelity and admitted that he was unfaithful to his wife twice, but she didn't know about it and said that their time at Fort Bragg had been the most content time of their marriage.
Job, Jeffrey.
Yeah, good job, Jeffrey. I'm so proud of you. Macdonald's testimony was followed by a clinical psychiatrist who stated that there was an extraordinary absence of anxiety, depression, and anger in Macdonald in regards to the loss of his family. He stated the extreme psychological response would likely see an individual convey himself as victimized and perhaps some sort of a martyr. He basically said, like, Jeffrey didn't have very many emotions and he was trying to make himself seem like he was just the victim of it all.
That collapsed lung is like the most devastating part of all of that.
His poor collapsed lung.
His non-infected collapsed lung. Dear Jeffrey.
Dear Jeffrey.
I still hate you. Love me.
P.S. Fuck off.
P.S. We still think you did it.
We do. So on October 13th, 1970, Colonel Rock issued a report recommending charges be dropped due to there being insufficient evidence to prove his guilt. He also added his belief that no truth existed in the charges and that the nature of the murders led him to believe that the perpetrators were either insane or under the influence of drugs. Rock also suggested civilian authorities investigate Stokely further, Later on that month, all the charges were dropped, but a new CID investigation was opened, tasked with finding the murders, with Macdonald still being considered a suspect. So even though like his shit was dropped, they still considered him a suspect because he was sketchy as fuck.
Yeah, he was super sketchy about everything.
Yeah, so they technically dropped his original charges, but they were still kind of looking at him. Okay, we dropped it, but like we don't believe you at the same time.
I gotta get away from the constant reminders of these people I killed.
You were feeling guilty, so you wanted to move. We all know, Jeffrey.
We know, Jeffrey, we know.
We know. So he obtained employment at St. Mary Medical Center, often working long hours. He also became an instructor at the UCLA Medical School, a medical director of the Long Beach Grand Prix, a lecturer on the subject of recognition and treatment of child abuse. Convenient, Jeffrey. In the development of a national cardiopulmonary resuscitation training program.
Child abuse, resuscitating, because he has 3 failed resuscitations
Right.
on his record.
So,
Let's just let him do a training program. This is how you not save your family.
Don't be me, huh?
Yeah, don't be me. Don't pull a Jeffrey.
Don't pull a Jeffrey.
That is a terrible thing to say.
It is. A little bit. It's okay, though.
Yeah, it's okay.
So, Macdonald lived in a $350,000 condo in Huntington Beach and is known to have lived a promiscuous life until he formed a long-term relationship with a 22-year-old airline stewardess named Candy Kramer in the late 1970s. Candy, doesn't that sound like a stripper's name?
Yeah, Candy Kramer. That's
Candy
like,
Kramer.
what's your favorite food and what street did you grow up on? Candy
Right.
Kramer. That's what happened. That's how she got her name.
In the years following the dismissal of murder charges, Macdonald received an abundance of emotional and public support. He wrote many letters to several magazines and newspapers detailing his willingness to further publicize the background and legalities of his case. So,
yeah, he's the lone survivor of basically like a home invasion. He escaped with a collapsed lung. He was able to pick up his whole life and change into a better person.
oh.
You poor guy.
So at first, Colette's stepfather-in-law and mother-in-law believed Macdonald and thought he was innocent. They soon began to suspect him after they received the transcripts from the Army hearing and saw that the story he told did not line up with the evidence. On April 30th, 1974, the Kassabs, which were Colette's parents, their attorney Richard Kahn and CID agent Peter Kearns presented a citizen's complaint against Macdonald to U.S. Chief District Judge Algernon Butler.
Mr. Butler.
Mr. Butler, requesting the convening grand jury to indict him on murder charges. The following month, Justice Department Attorney Victor Warhide ruled the case worthy of prosecution. Homeboy couldn't even say no for himself. He had to have a statement written by his attorney saying, nope, not doing it. I do not understand why he had to have his attorneys write a statement for him. Like he's a child. My mother said no, I couldn't do it. I'm sorry.
My mom told me to tell you that I'm not allowed to talk to you.
Why couldn't you just be like, nope, I'm not going to? So the psychiatrist who testified at his Army hearing came back to testify, stating that Macdonald would often break down and cry and become emotional when speaking about his family, but he would always recover very quickly. So I think we talked about that before, about how he was very quick to turn on the waterworks, but then very quick to turn them off. Even the psychiatrist came and said, like, this is what he used to do. It's a little weird.
A little strange, sir.
He also stated that he believed that if Macdonald had done this, he would be able to completely block it from his mind. Like, he would be able to just be like, oh, like, I murdered them, but I'm blocking it. I don't care.
Yeah, it's true. People do block things, but that's kind of...
It's a little psychotic when you block the fact that you murdered your entire family.
Yeah, because then it's not only like he blocked it out of his mind. He blocked it out of his mind, and then he made up another scenario in place of it where all of these things happened. That's what we call getting your story straight.
What we call being psychotic.
Yeah, that's having enough time to think about, ways that it all could have happened to make you look better.
I think he was very good at just playing it up for people.
Yeah, he was manipulating everybody about it.
He was. And I mean, luckily, Colette's family kind of saw straight through that and were like, sir, we don't believe you. The chief of the FBI's crime lab also testified, stating that contrary to Macdonald's claims that all of the holes on his pajama top were caused while the garment was stationary and not in movement, like he says. He also said that Colette's blood had transferred onto the garment before it was torn, which goes against what he originally said happened. He originally said, they got pulled over his head when they were fighting, that like whenever he got to Colette's body, he put his pajama top over her. So basically what they're saying is the cuts that were in his pajama top happened when it wasn't moving. Because I don't know if you remember back when the police were like coming up with their own theory, they thought that he put his pajama top on top of Colette and then stabbed her a bunch more times. Basically what he was saying was that there was no way that the cuts that were on his pajama top happened while it was moving, because they were just too like clean cut. So Macdonald was recalled to testify on January 21st, 1975. It is said on this occasion he was remarkably arrogant and sarcastic when questioned about his infidelity and the prosecution's claims of forensic contradiction to his story. He would often respond by screaming, "I don't know. I don't even know what crap you're trying to feed me," when he was asked how Colette's blood was transferred onto a sheet taken from Kristen's room into the master bedroom. Macdonald then made a statement that 5 long years had passed since the murders of his family and his efforts to start life anew, and that the questions the prosecution were asking were questions he had to live with for 5 years. Poor Jeffrey. He's basically trying to make it seem like, oh, I've been trying to forget this and you guys are making me think about it again. Like, oh, you poor thing. How dare we?
How rude.
On July 29th, Judge Dupree denied the double jeopardy and speedy trial arguments successfully filed by his attorneys and allowed the proposed trial date of August 18th. He was indicted, but then he was released. But then he was arraigned again and brought back to be arrested. And then his lawyers tried to say, oh, you can't do this. This is double jeopardy. It's been too long, so you're ruining or whatever his rights of a speedy trial. But that was denied. And then I think he went back to trial. But then the appeals court ruled to stay the proceedings. So they didn't actually go back to court. It's a lot. So a lot happened. The panel of this court ordered the indictment dismissed on the grounds of a defendant's right to a speedy trial on January 23rd, 1976. He was released again because
his rights were fucked with.
His rights were fucked with.
I like it.
That's what we're going with. Again, they tried going back in and saying, you can't do this, it's double jeopardy, you can't, whatever. But they said, no, we can. So he tried to do double jeopardy, and they said, no, it's not double jeopardy. Sit your ass down.
Sit your motherfucking ass down, bitch.
Oh, God. Oh, that's so funny.
Try not to.
It's okay. We have fun in this podcast.
Oh, we have fun here. We have fun here. Cats and Crimes is a monthly true crime blog started by two cousins who decided that their passion of digging deeper into unsolved crimes and missing persons was better shared with others. Covering cold cases, missing persons, active investigations, and causes of death that can't be explained, they help bring awareness to these sometimes forgotten crimes. You can check them out at www.catsandcrime.net or on Facebook and Instagram at Cats and Crime.
So, Macdonald was brought to trial on July 16, 1979, and charged with 3 counts of murder. He was tried in Raleigh, North Carolina before Judge Dupree and pleaded not guilty to the charges. Macdonald was defended by Bernard Siegel and Wade Smith.
What was he? A flamboyant
civilian something.
The flamboyant civilian defense attorney.
Judge Dupree ruled that none of the transcripts from the previous Article 32 with the Army would be allowed to be used as evidence in this trial. The prosecution tried proving that there was no way that Macdonald's claims of being attacked with his pajama shirt on were true. They said that the cuts on the pajama shirt were small with no jagged edges, and that meant the pajama shirt was stationary when he received his injuries and was not fighting for his life and defending himself, which I don't think he was anyway.
Yeah, there was no way.
No.
They did all that damage and he was defending himself, but he had no real defense wounds just to
Just that one little, very clean-cut stab that punctured his lung, and then scratches on his face and back, so.
Little boo-boo on his forehead.
Oh, the poor baby. The defense said they did a test with the shirt in movement, and the holes were perfectly round and had no jagged edges, so it was possible he was moving when the shirt was cut the way it was. Okay. The defense also stated there was a lack of motive for him to have committed these crimes because he had no history of violence and no history of domestic abuse against his wife or children. One of the first witnesses Siegel subpoenaed was Helena Stokely, so they finally brought her in.
The little druggie that, with the floppy hat, apparently.
The acid head with the floppy hat. They finally subpoenaed her and brought her in. But obviously, this was 9 years later, so, like, you're asking a druggie to recount shit from 9 years ago.
She is not going to remember anything.
No.
She has no idea what's going on.
No, I guarantee she got subpoenaed and she was like, what's this for? She had no idea.
You want me to do what?
You want what? I don't understand. Like, 9 years later and you expect somebody who was on acid to be able to tell you what happened 9 years ago.
And just because he didn't have any history of, like, violence or, any abuse against his wife and his kids, that stuff was so taboo back then. So they probably didn't, the wife probably wasn't like, hey, my husband's beating me.
It's just, it's one of those things where, like, they were trying so hard to make it seem like he was innocent. So they were just throwing anything out there.
They grasped at anything they could.
Yeah. Helena Stokely, she was subpoenaed by his lawyers. Siegel spoke with her in private for 2 hours before she was brought on the stand, and he tried to persuade her to confess, stating that she would have immunity due to a statute of limitations. It's just, it doesn't make sense, because I know you're not allowed to, like, persuade people to say the things you want them to in court, but...
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess back in the 70s you were allowed to do that, but I know you can't now.
And he can't sit there and be like, oh, well, guess what? You'll have immunity due to the statute of limitations. Like, that's not, you can't guarantee somebody that.
She repeatedly told him that she couldn't help him and denied ever seeing Macdonald before. Once on the stand, she testified that she couldn't remember what she was doing the night of the murders and brought up her heavy drug use in the 70s and that the night of the murders was not the first night that she doesn't remember what she was doing. Siegel tried arguing for the introduction of earlier testimony from people who say Stokely confessed to them that she was involved in the murders, but on August 20th, Dupree refused the introduction, stating that it would not add any further value to the case.
Apparently she told people, like, hey, I definitely did this.
Yeah, apparently she told a bunch of people that she had something to do with it. Like, she says that she remembers doing it, but it was never brought into, like, the trial. Like, they never cared about that, I guess.
Yeah.
And so when he tried having that introduction, like, into the testimony, they basically told him, like, no, that's not going to help the case right now, so we're not doing it. There was a couple people, I think, that came to the cops and said, like, oh, she told me she did it, so, like, why wouldn't you try to, like, catch that confession? But they didn't ever try to do that.
Yeah, if you heard someone telling you that, you'd be like, okay, who was that? Let's go find them, instead of like, well, it's not really that important right now, but thanks for letting me know.
Why wouldn't you want to know that? Or why wouldn't you want to actually get a real confession rather than asking her and her being like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, dumbass.
The final witness to testify was Macdonald himself, who testified on his own behalf on August 23rd and 24th. Macdonald's lawyers tried to humanize him and asked many questions about his family, and Macdonald described them all in detail and described their individual personalities, stating they were all friends and shared everything. That's such a weird statement.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
I have no idea.
Friends and they shared everything. He's talking about his family. Like, when people ask me about my family, I'm not like, we're all friends. We share everything.
Right. It's just, it's such a weird statement to make.
I didn't kill them. We shared everything.
I didn't kill them. They were my friends. It really is just like the weirdest statement anyone could ever make. Being asked about stuff like that. Like, oh, we were friends. Yeah.
We shared everything.
I don't like it. Macdonald claimed he had never remarried because he was just always thinking about his wife and children. Oh. The prosecution mainly asked about the contradictions in Macdonald's story and the evidence, and he was never able to offer any plausible explanation for most of these. Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, not surprised.
Not surprised. The prosecution was able to highlight the inconsistencies in Macdonald's stories over the years, and Siegel very often tried raising objections to these, but was usually overruled, which makes sense. You can't just, every time they say something about your client, you can't be like, I object to that. That's not how it works.
Yeah, especially because he's only doing it to anything that's just inconsistent.
Anytime they're highlighting the inconsistencies in his stories, then he's like, oh no, I object to that. Like, that's not how it works, my guy. In closing statements, the prosecution took their time to talk about how Macdonald's injuries were nothing compared to what his family suffered and were inconsistent with his account of fighting for his life with attackers. They also talked about how a lot of what he said happened just didn't add up with the physical evidence that was collected at the crime scene, stating, evidence doesn't lie, but people do, which is very true. People lie all the time.
Like Jeffrey.
Like Jeffrey.
Jeffrey is a liar.
We don't like you, Jeffrey. The defense decided to talk a lot about how Macdonald was a loving husband and father and that he was subjected to a campaign of prosecution over the years for a crime he did not commit. They also tried to say that he had absolutely no motive to commit such crimes and referenced family photos stating it just made no sense. In a final address, Judge Dupree informed the panel they had three choices. They could either find him not guilty of the crimes, find him guilty of first-degree murder, or find him guilty of second-degree murder. So shortly after 4 p.m. on August 29th, the jury announced they had reached their verdict after 6 hours of deliberation. Macdonald was convicted of 1 count of first-degree murder in the death of 2-year-old Kristen and 2 counts of second-degree murder in the death of 5-year-old Kimberly and his wife Colette. Macdonald showed no emotions as the verdicts were read. Judge Dupree sentenced him to a life sentence for each murder to be served consecutively. So on July 29th, 1980, a panel of the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed Macdonald's conviction, ruling via a 2-to-1 margin that the 9-year delay in bringing him to trial violated his Sixth Amendment rights to a speedy trial. So he was released on August 22nd, having posted a $100,000 bail, and returned to work as a director of emergency medicine at St. Mary's Medical Center in Long Beach, California. So
What
again,
the
he was
fuck?
released. He's just going to jail, getting released, going to jail, getting released. It
I love how he just
doesn't make
goes right
sense.
back to work. He's like, well, now that we're done with that, let me go back to
Right.
work.
It's like, oh, I was released from jail. Time to go back to work. Like,
Hey,
I don't
Jeffrey, you
under.
on vacation? No, man, I was in jail.
I was in jail, but I'm back now.
Oh, God.
So he announced his engagement to his fiancee, Randy D. Markwith, in March of 1982.
I need to know what happened to Candy.
She said, you've been to jail multiple times, and I just can't do it. Can't do it. 6 months later, the appeals court voted 5-5 to hear the appeal, but the application was denied, upholding the previous ruling. That decision was appealed on May 26, 1981, and the case was accepted for consideration. On March 31st, 1982, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that Macdonald's rights to a speedy trial were not violated, and he was rearrested and sent back to prison to serve his 3 life sentences. He's back in jail now.
It's like the worst game of Monopoly ever. Like, as soon as
Right.
you go, it's like, nope, jail.
Back
Nope,
to jail.
Back to jail.
Back to jail. You drove a car? Go to jail.
You go to jail.
You blinked your eyes? You go to jail.
You go back to work after being released from jail? You go back to jail.
You go back to jail. That's basically what happened with him. It's just like out of jail, in jail, out of jail, in jail. I think it was like a little game he liked to play, maybe. I don't know.
I guess.
So Macdonald continued to try to appeal the decision, but it never actually worked. They never let him appeal it, and he is still in prison. He has tried to get out on parole, but has been denied each time, and he still holds tight to his innocence. I'm sure you do, Jeffrey.
Sure you do, Jeffrey. I'm glad that
So-
they finally got it together and they were like, you know what? We should probably stop letting this dude out.
Right, because look how many times they like arrested him and then let him out and then arrested him and then let him out. Like, I don't understand that. And I felt so bad for Colette's family. Like, he would go to jail and they would think, "Oh, okay, thank God, it's done." And then he would be released and then they'd have to deal with it all over again. Colette's stepfather and her mother are both dead now. They died. But his stepfather recorded something so that at every one of Jeffrey's parole hearings, they would play it because he does not want Jeffrey to get out of jail ever.
That's really sad.
It is, because he went to like his first parole hearing and testified and said like, don't let him out. But then he got sick, I think, and then ended up dying. So then he recorded that so that, they would never let him out.
So cute, though.
It is.
So apparently this stepdad wrote in his recorded message, stated, "I want to be sure he serves out his sentence the way it should be served out. I don't want him walking the streets."
I don't know if you remember back in the day when, like, Trump was, like, pardoning people with, like, Corona, when Corona first came out. Do you remember that?
Please don't tell me he tried to let him go.
Well, this article says, in a Twitter message to President Trump over the summer, Macdonald's second wife, Catherine Macdonald, said her husband was sick and spoke of fears she had for him during the corona pandemic. And it says Jeff is an honorably discharged Vietnam vet. He is 77 and while eligible for parole since 1990, he was deferred because he will never dishonor his family by admitting to something he did not do. He is sick and I fear for his life due to COVID in the prison petri dish.
Candy wouldn't have done that, I guarantee.
So she tried to get Trump to, like, pardon him.
Donald Trump, save us.
But then it says right here, Trump never replied. Trump doesn't care about you, Jeffrey.
His attorneys also made a plea. Said prosecutors have argued against the release, noting the gruesome nature of the crime and arguing that the court lacks the jurisdiction to consider the request. They said, given the nature and circumstance of the brutal murders of his family, including his little girls, to release Macdonald now would not reflect the seriousness of his crimes.
I mean, you don't deserve it either.
Yeah, he really doesn't.
I just think that's so funny that she was like, oh, Trump, please release my husband.
Trump, save my husband. He killed his first family and now I want to make a family.
He killed his first family, but, like, he was in the army, so, like, pardon him, please.
Hashtag bring back candy.
I love how she put in there that he was a Vietnam vet to try to, like, be like, oh, he's such a good dude. You're not a good dude, Jeffrey.
Bro, you were discharged.
I still can't believe he was honorably discharged, though.
Yeah. Extending the compassionate release to someone who showed no compassion to his young daughters and pregnant wife is in contradiction of the terms. It doesn't matter if it's a pandemic or not, bro. Like, you showed no compassion the entire time, but now you want us to show compassion to you? Just because you are not willing to just be like, all right, look, I did it. You all know I did it.
Everyone knows he did it. I mean, none of what he says even makes sense of what he says happened. So, like, we know, guy. You can just admit it. And, like, he keeps saying, oh, I don't want to dishonor my family. You dishonored them by murdering them. Not only did you take both your kids' lives and your wife's life, your wife was pregnant, so you took that life too. I just, like I said, when I first started reading about this case, I kind of believed him. And I was like, oh, crap, acid hippies. The more you research it and look into it, it just doesn't make sense that it was not him.
Well, because you just don't think like somebody could do that to, like, their kids. Now, granted,
Yeah.
a husband killing a wife, that's normal. That still, like, sucks, but that's, like, more normal than, like, a dad killing his kids. So you're just like, there's no way. There's no way that he went in there and killed his wife and his kids. But
especially in such, like, a brutal way.
Yeah.
Because I guess being a parent, you think back in your head that no parent could do that to their own child, but then, psychos like Jeffrey are out there.
Psycho Jeffrey.
God damn it, Jeffrey.
It says that to let Macdonald out early, even with the pandemic, would undermine the seriousness of his crimes and do a great disservice to the respect of the law. So he was so worried about getting COVID in jail that he wanted to get out. However, he was offered the COVID-19 vaccine and he was like, nope.
So you want to get out of jail because you're afraid of COVID, but they want to give you the vaccine and you're like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. It says, although Macdonald is free to refuse the COVID-19 vaccine, his doing so eliminates the only extraordinary and compelling reason he has offering the warranting of his sentence reduction, the risk of the severe illness presented by COVID-19. So the only thing that could possibly get him out of jail that he's so worried about, but then he gets, kind of like this little option, like, hey, we can maybe protect you. And he's like, no way. Either let me out or I'm getting it.
No, Jeffrey.
Fucking Jeffrey.
I don't understand you, Jeffrey.
I believe they went 9 years back, though, for asking a drug dealer for 9 years.
Right. They didn't call her to the damn stand at the original, hearing. But then 9 years later, they bring her on the stand and expect her to remember what happened 9 years ago. She
When
probably
she
doesn't
was
even remember what happened a week ago.
Yeah, 9 days ago is already asking too much, but 9 years?
Right. Like, what the fuck do you think is gonna happen with a druggie who's been doing drugs since before the 1970s? Do you really think she's gonna remember that shit? I don't do drugs now. I don't remember shit that happened 9 years ago.
Yeah, 9 years ago, I couldn't tell you.
Right. Like, you ask me what happened 9 years ago, I'm gonna be like, I have no idea.
Good question. What did I do?
What happened on August 14th, 9 years ago? Fuck if I know.
Was that a Tuesday?
Was that what? Was it Taco Tuesday?
What day do you think that was? Was it raining? What
Was
was
it?
happening?
What was raining? Was it raining? Was it sunny? Was it? What was happening? Did it snow in August? I don't know. Maybe if they offered her drugs, she would have confessed.
Should have been like, now that I think about it, actually was there. Good looking out for me. Glad you're aware of my whereabouts.
Thank you for the cocaine. I don't even know if they could have charged her for that 9 years later. Because I know there's statute of limitations on stuff. I just don't know what the statute of limitations is on murder. I don't think there is one. Some crimes have no statutes of limitations. For example, murder typically has none. In a few states such as Kentucky, West Virginia, and North Carolina where this happened, there is no statute of limitations on felony charges. So she would have been arrested either way.
Yeah, that flamboyant lawyer was like, hey, just tell us. You won't get in trouble.
You won't get in trouble because of the statute of limitations, but then as soon as you admit to it, you go into jail. I wonder if this house is still there at Fort Bragg or if they demolished it.
They would have to demolish it, you know?
Yeah, let's see. I'm gonna look on my Google Maps and see if I put that address in, if it still exists. 544 Castle Drive in Fort Bragg is now a community center.
Oh.
That doesn't seem right.
That's huh.
It's a little odd.
I don't know how I feel about that.
That's really weird.
Like a community center where we all get together in the last place where a family lives. That just doesn't seem right.
Let's go hold our FRG meetings in a house where a family was brutally murdered.
I don't know if I like it.
I don't like it at all. I just feel like that's a weird thing to make that house.
Come gather in the living room where an extreme struggle happened between a man and his coffee table. And over here is the sink that he used to wash his hands before checking his own wounds.
This is the sink that he used to make sure he didn't infect himself when he punctured his own lung.
After he brutally murdered his own family. He did a lot of weird shit back in the 70s, I'm telling you.
I mean, yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Homie over here was jumping in and out of jail like, ba-dum-bum, ba-dum-bum, here I come, there I go.
You know what? There was teleporting killers, and Jeffrey is a teleporting prisoner.
Yep, teleporting prisoner. He's got Candy on the outside, Jose on the inside.
Jose on the inside.
He's like, I have had it with you, Jose. I'm going back to Candy. Candy, I am sick and tired of your stripping. I'm going back to Jose.
Don't make me murder you too, Jose.
I will take you out, Jose.
Fuck you, Jose.
And that is the story of how North Carolina can't get its shit together.
And that is how the cookie crumbles.
And that is how you don't murder your family. Murder.
Murder.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Dark and Twisties Podcast.
And find us by searching Dark and Twisties on Spotify and Google Podcasts.
We now have a website you can check out at www.darkandtwisties.com. Bye! You didn't bye with me.
I said bye.
Oh, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I said bye.
We have to do it again, the bye.
Oh, are we saying it at the same time?
Yeah, kind of, I guess.
Are you going to count it down?
Yeah, I'll count it. Ready?
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Bye!
Bye! That's the best thing ever.
Oh, that shall work.